Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm your host, Brandy Fowler, news reporter for LinkedIn, and I'm stepping in for Andrew Seaman while he's away this week. I'm coming to you live from the LinkedIn office in Atlanta. So please take a moment to introduce yourself in the comments. Tell us about where you're from, about your career. It's a great time to network with each other. Also, please feel free to drop any questions you have as we chat about all things remote work today. Okay, I see people are already saying hello. We have Dolores from Texas, Richard from Nashville, Christine from Chicago. Hello. Juan from Las Vegas. Welcome to all of you. We have an amazing guest today. Her name is Labria Jones, and she's also known as the Remote Work Queen. She is a remote work advocate and social educator. She also hosts a digital course where she shares content about how to find and land remote jobs. She's also the creator and co-host of the biggest remote work conference for job seekers. So as you can imagine, she's the perfect guest for this topic. Labria, hello. Thank you for
Hi.
joining us. Hey, good to see you. Please tell us
Thank you
what
for having me.
inspired your remote work journey. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just saying thanks for having me.
No, thank you. Please tell us what inspired your remote work journey and also what motivated you to want to help others to find remote jobs too.
I'd say what inspired my remote work journey. So I've been working remotely for over 13 years. So since way before the pandemic and quarantine and people got pushed into working remotely. Back in 2008, I needed to make extra money. I was a single mom. My daughter was very young. And I had this challenge of having to decide between family and finances. I wanted to make extra money. I wanted to have an extra job, a side hustle. But the cost of sending my daughter to daycare, hiring someone to watch her, would have negated the money that I would have made on that second job. And so I ended up finding a remote job in customer service. And so I did customer service for Toys R Us years ago, back in 2008. And so ever since then, I've been working remotely on and off since 2008 in various roles. And what got me into helping other people do this is back in 2015, I launched a program to take a group of people around the world for an entire year. And so a lot of people expressed an interest in wanting to do this and wanting to take advantage of this program and live and work in 4 different countries for a whole year. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that, right?
Right.
But a lot of folks said that their challenge was they didn't know how they were going to make money while they did it. And so it occurred to me at that time, back in 2015, that a lot of people didn't realize that remote work was available and it's a thing, it exists. And there are all kinds of remote opportunities across the board. And so at that time, I said, well, you know what? Let me start teaching people how to do this. I started writing blog posts and then ultimately created a course and a conference to help people identify remote opportunities and help them land those.
Yes, I love that. And also, well, clearly at the very beginning of the pandemic, we all learned how to work remotely. Those of us who were lucky enough to have work still. And there's been so many changes in the last 2 years with remote work and hybrid work and kind of where it stands. It can be a little bit confusing. So I'm just curious, like, where do you think we are in the whole post-pandemic return to work, hybrid work from home world? Like, are more people in the office? Are they at home? Like, is it a mix?
Yeah, I think so. When we say are more people at home, I think it's, what are we comparing it to? Are we comparing it to prior to the pandemic when, remote work was something that was happening that a lot of people didn't know about? The truth is, there have been companies that have been fully remote since well before the pandemic. I just want to make sure that that's clear. There's so many people that have been working remotely since well before the pandemic. There are companies that have been fully remote, like Buffer, who kind of led the charge on remote work a long time ago, years ago. And there are companies that were hybrid as well, like the company that I work for. We've been hybrid since prior to the pandemic as well. And so when we say more, it's what are we really comparing it to? I think we're trying to say, where are the chips falling post pandemic? Right? Because during the pandemic, almost everybody had to go remote. And now what we're seeing is kind of a reshuffling. There have been places where companies have drawn a line in the sand and said, either we're going to be remote or we're not. Right. And so you start to see these articles and these news stories and these announcements come out almost every week with companies saying, yes, we are staking our claim. We are now a fully remote company, or no, come back to the office. And so I think what we're going to see over the next couple of years is that, companies are starting to normalize and figure out who they want to be in this space. And we are going to see more people working remotely than we did before the pandemic. We are going to see more people going back to the office than we did during the pandemic. So I think there's going to be a bit of a mix. But I want to assure folks that there are still quite a few and quite a lot of remote opportunities out there once the dust all settles.
I think that'll make a lot of people feel better because I was going to ask you, like, do you think we'll ever see like work return to what it was before the pandemic, like where everybody's in the office 40 hours a week? Or if it'll just be, like you said, like a mix of companies deciding who they are and letting their workers either work remotely, hybrid, or in the office?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will continue to see a mix. And the truth is, again, remote work's been a thing since way before the pandemic. And so I think a lot of us are baselining it from what we thought we knew prior to the pandemic. What happened during the pandemic is a lot more people became aware that remote work existed. So it
Mhm.
always existed and it will always exist. There will always be companies that that allow people to do work from anywhere, from home, from a co-working space, which is where I am today, from a beachside villa in Mexico or multiple places. There will always be companies that allow for remote work. There will always be roles that allow for remote work. But again, I think, if we're going to compare this to the beginning of the pandemic, we will see a lot of companies say, no, no, we want to come back into the office.
Mhm.
And there's a vast array of reasons why we'll see that. But I want to encourage people that it's not something that will ever go away. I think we will always see companies that are remote first companies or companies that have a hybrid environment.
Definitely, definitely. I want to take a moment just to say hi to a few more people in the comments. Yolanda from Texas, Carol from the UK, Jade from South Africa. Wow. Ray from Arizona. Hello to all of you. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to get back to our conversation. So, I think a lot of people, you talked about it a little bit, but just the benefits of remote and hybrid work, I think are missed sometimes, even on a
Yep.
mental health tip. So, can you talk about that a little bit? The benefits for not only employees, but employers too.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's a conversation that we have quite often on LinkedIn, right? I think any given day there's a conversation on LinkedIn about the benefits of remote work. And I think the great thing about hybrid option, when it's done right, it allows employees to work in the ways that they choose, which is a big deal. I think people miss out on the fact that being able to decide is a benefit, right? And so it gives people the scenarios to either say, "Hey, I need to work in an office because my work is very physical, right? And the things that I need to do, I need the items in the office to do that." Or people who want to work in an office because they enjoy the camaraderie of being around their other employees, or people who don't want to work in the office at all, right? So it gives the people that don't want to work in the office that option. For me, I have always been I'll come to I want days where I can come to the office. And so I think hybrid provides people a very, very big benefit, which is choice, being able to choose. I think as adults, as humans, we want to be able to choose the ways in which we work best. And so hybrid, if done well, provides that huge benefit. There's a lot of benefits to being able to work in face to face with your coworkers. There's a lot of benefits being able to work remotely as well, right? So there's loads of benefits to working remotely. The biggest of which is increased morale and productivity, right? And the retention of employees, especially now that people have gotten a taste of working remotely. That's now become, for a lot of people, that's now become a deal breaker. For a lot of people, being able to work remotely has become a deal breaker. And so retention is part of that benefit as well. And the truth is, more than 60% of employees want flexibility.
Yeah.
And even more importantly, more than 80% of working moms say they need it. And as a working mom myself, I absolutely did need it for my entire career.
Yeah, it's so important. I think exactly what you were saying, that flexibility, that ability to choose how you want
Mhm.
your work life to look like, that work life balance that a lot of employees are demanding now. That's so, so important. So thank you for that. So let's get into how do you find these jobs, especially for people who are looking for remote jobs who are tuning into our chat. So what sectors of the workplace have you noticed that have the most remote and hybrid jobs?
So thank you for asking that. I think it's a great question because I think people assume that remote jobs are for developers. And I'm going to answer this question, but I also want to caveat this with the question was most. right?
Mm.
And so I'm going to name some areas. And if I don't name yours, it doesn't mean that there aren't remote jobs in your role. I've seen remote jobs in all sectors, almost every single sector, right? But these are the ones that are the most, right? So development roles in technology or coders, right, or software engineers, those are always going to be the most. That's always going to be number one. But then there are roles that work around developers and support developers. So your project managers, your software testers, your business analysts, your data analysts, and product owners. I've seen so many more roles for product owners as organizations start to really lean into investing in building out their product and building out their software and services to customers. I've seen so many more product owner roles. So if that's something that you're interested in or you want to move into, product ownership is a great one as well. And I think it would surprise people that there are a large amount of remote roles in design, including user experience design. So as I just said, a lot of companies are investing in growing their product and they need user experience design to do that as well. A lot of remote roles in human resources, in finance, accounting, general management, marketing. There's just a lot of remote roles across the board, but those are some that I see most often.
I think that's so important. What you said is that just because you're mentioning certain spaces doesn't mean that your own career path doesn't have remote work involved in it. So it's important to look for those jobs within your own field too, because they're there. That's so
Absolutely.
important. So let's actually bring up some comments. I'm seeing some people talking about remote work in there. And Noel says, I think the flexibility of remote work gives employees the opportunity to decide their best environment. True. That's exactly what we were just saying. And then Eric says, people appear happier working remotely even a few days a week. It's again about that flexibility, about having the choice to, if you want to work remotely, you can. And I think that improves mental health, like what you said, when you have the opportunity to choose how you want to work. So let's
Absolutely.
get back into our chat. I want to follow that up with what is the best way to find these remote jobs? Even though they're kind of decreasing, there's still an opportunity to find those jobs.
Yeah, and so I would love that you asked that. I actually am very, very excited that LinkedIn added the filter for remote and hybrid jobs last year. I was super excited about that. Prior to that, I would direct people to job boards that are specifically designed for posting and highlighting remote jobs. There are a lot of remote job boards out there, but I will say I'm very, very excited that LinkedIn added that feature that you can go in and filter for remote and hybrid jobs. And again, there are remote job boards specifically for that. So we work remotely, remote.co. And I'd honestly say the best way to find remote jobs is to start looking. And I know that's a duh. I know people are like, obviously, you're supposed to look, but you would be surprised at how many people tell me they want a remote job. And then I say, well, where have you been looking or have you been looking? And they say, no, I didn't think I could get a job remotely, or I didn't think that my job could be done remotely. And for that reason, I actually have an entire section of my course just dedicated to where are the remote jobs. And today and now, because so many more companies are embracing this and so many more of your mainstream job boards, your LinkedIn, your Indeed, are starting to see that that's available and that's what people are looking for. They're doing a much better job of filtering for those as well. And so I used to tell people you needed to go to the remote job boards. And now I believe that some of your mainstream job boards are great places to look as well.
Absolutely. And I've seen you talk on Instagram specifically about ways that people can enhance their skill sets or kind of revamp their resumes to land these remote jobs or even hybrid jobs. Can you talk a little bit about that? What can people do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when I talk about enhancing your skill set, I'm normally referring to people who believe that the roles that they're in can't be done remotely. Let's say you're moving from very physical work and you want to move into remote work, right? So for example, maybe you work in retail, or maybe you're a truck driver, or maybe you're a teacher, you work in a classroom and you want to transition into remote work. We live in a time now where people can learn new skills without having to go back to college. So there are boot camps, there are courses, there are so many opportunities for you to learn new skills and to move into remote roles. So things like instructional design, things like development, things like quality assurance and software testing, or technical writing. And just so happens in my community, we're talking about this topic this entire month and next month about upskilling into roles that can transition you into remote jobs. And we talk about updating your resume, I think the keys for getting a remote job are pretty similar to the keys for getting any job, right? You want to be able to talk about the positions that you're looking for in the ways that the hiring managers are talking about the position. So you want to make sure that you've got the keywords in your resume that are in the job posting. I always say, let the job posting guide you, right?
Mhm.
So the other thing I'd say is, if you have any remote experience at all, even if it was just during the pandemic, even if it was temporary, make sure you call that out. So next to your position, you can put remote in parentheses or hybrid in parentheses, just so that folks know that you've had experience working remotely. And I'd say you have to maximize your LinkedIn profile. You have to think about your LinkedIn profile as your own web page full of, and it's maximized for SEO, right? Search engine optimization, because recruiters are hanging out on LinkedIn all day looking for you. And they're going to find you if you have the right keywords in your LinkedIn. So you should maximize the use of LinkedIn. And just like, those keywords from those jobs postings should go in your resume, they should be in your LinkedIn. The LinkedIn headline has 220 characters and your summary is over 2,000 characters. That is a lot of opportunities to put the right keywords in there. I actually got my position from LinkedIn. I did not apply for it, had never even heard of the company, had never even heard of the job, but our CEO was looking for some people to build a practice with, and he put in some keywords and I popped up. And so you've got to maximize that LinkedIn profile and use it like a web page.
Absolutely. Great tips. And like when you talk about keywords for people who are kind of unclear about that, it's like literally looking. Sometimes you can look at a job description and pull those keywords out of there and put them in your LinkedIn profile or in your resume so that they can find you. So it's really about like identifying roles to remote and hybrid roles that you want, and then putting that information in your profile on LinkedIn and then in your resume too. So thank you for
Yep.
that. That's an amazing tip. Want to take a moment just to address some more hellos before we continue. Want to say hello to Jane in Atlanta. Hello to Charles in San Francisco. Hello to Pamela in North Carolina. And hello to Heather from Colorado. And we have another comment in there. Terrence says, thank you. Sorry, a question. I wondered that exact question about how to transition from a physical position to a remote position. Um, yes, can you address that?
Yeah. So, and that's what I was mentioning earlier about taking the opportunity to upskill. Again, there are a number of different positions and roles and skills that you can learn to transition into working remotely. I named a few, but I'm happy to name more. Digital marketing. Social media marketing is huge, right? So all of the ads that you see on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Google, someone's creating those ads. And then copywriting, someone has to write the ad, someone has to write the details that are going into the ad, under the ad, someone's got to write the titles to the videos that you see on YouTube, right? So copywriting is another one. Virtual assistant work is huge. So I actually have a friend who does a virtual assistant challenge on a regular basis, and she's actually doing one next month where she teaches people how to move into virtual assistant work. And so again, we live in a time now where you can go on Coursera, you can go on Udemy to learn new skills. You can take a development bootcamp if you want to go into development work. You can take courses on project management, product ownership, data analytics, all kinds of things without having to go and get a whole new degree. And a lot of these things can be learned in less than a year. Quite a few of them can be learned in less than 6 months.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And the next thing I want to move into is networking, because a lot of people that I've talked to who work remotely have said like networking has really helped them land a job. I think that's true for any job, but specifically for remote work, I found that to be true too. So how can
Yeah.
you network to find out about the remote and hybrid jobs that are out there, and like who should you be connecting with?
So obviously, I'm going to say me. so,
Yeah, that's true.
so I think one of the things that I've done is I've built a community of people who are doing just that, right? Looking for remote work. And so I think the Quit Commuting Academy is a great place to start and start to meet with accountability partners. And people that are looking for and doing the same things that you're doing. And so I love the community because we share a lot of resources, we share a lot of information in that community. But additionally, I tell people that, utilizing LinkedIn is a great way to network and start to put yourself in positions where, the jobs can come for you, right? Or about opportunities. that are available to you. And so one of the few things that I think people should do is, start to think about what kind of roles do you want and what are the companies that you would love to work for, and then start going to do that research on LinkedIn to see, how can I connect with people that work at these companies. And a few of the people that you absolutely should always connect with is, of course, the recruiters, right? You've got to connect with the recruiters, but you should also connect with, depending on the position that you would be interested in, the type of roles you would be interested in, connect with the person that role would report to, right? And so if you are looking to be a project manager, connect with the person that runs the PMO. Also, connect with someone that would be your colleague at that company, right? So look if you're looking to be a project manager, you want to connect with other people that would be project managers in this roles. And don't stop at the connection. So clicking that connect button is not enough. So after that, it's time to start engaging. And so when you see people post articles or you see people post an opinion about something, have those conversations. And I think what people fail to do, or what people are missing on LinkedIn, is they don't treat it like we treated Facebook back in the day. And when we think about the number of friends that we made on Facebook years ago that are now our friends in real life, it all came from engaging. It all came in from, someone making a comment and you replying to that comment, either commiserating or saying that you can relate or making a joke or, saying, yes, I totally agree with you. And so I think people miss the engagement. They come on LinkedIn and they click that connect button, they think it stops there. But, let's engage with one another so that, you stop being a number or a candidate and you start being a person. People start seeing Libria Jones, and Libria Jones starts getting connected with my face, right? My avatar. And then Libria Jones and my avatar starts getting connected with the things that I say, the opinions that I have, the conversations that we've had. And so, once it's time to say, hey, I'm interested in a position, can you tell me if you think I'm a great fit? It's not an awkward conversation because we're already friends, right? We've been connected on LinkedIn and we've been engaging together as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome tips as you have been dropping this whole conversation. I want to take a moment to answer a couple of questions in the comments that I'm seeing people put in there. Courtney says, I would love remote work, but I'm struggling to get a role that will accept me being entry level. What's your advice for Courtney?
So I think that I'm going to say that I think the challenge is not that you're entry level, right? I think a lot of times what people are missing is that there may be a different stumbling block along your path, right? And so when you look at the process, is it that you're applying and you're not getting interviews? If that's the case, maybe it's time to call in an expert and say, hey, can you review my resume, right? So here's 3 roles that I'm interested in. Here's my resume. Can you tell me if these roles meet this resume? Because companies are willing to hire people that are entry level. I promise you they are. It's how they maximize their budgets. It's how they maximize their training and development of their employees. And so it is okay that you're entry level, but possibly the challenge is that your resume is not speaking to the roles that you're applying for. And so I say, look at the process, figure out where your bottleneck is and say, hey, is it time to call in an expert? Should I have a resume reviewer either review my resume or rewrite it? If you are getting interviews, but you're not making it past the interview stage, is it time to call in an interview coach? And there are interview coaches out there. My friend Jenna Mulheron of Own the Interview is a great interview coach. She will sit you down and actually walk through the job posting, the job position, and ask you the types of questions that you would be asked in the interview and give you feedback on how to do that. And so I'd say don't decide that it's because you are entry level. Think through what are the points in the process that I'm having a challenge with and address those, because I promise you companies are open to hiring people at entry level.
Awesome. And then Stefan says, what would you say is the biggest difficulty in finding a remote job? It's a good one.
Biggest difficulty. I think the biggest challenge for people is, one, patience. It takes on average 6 months. It can take on average 3 to 6 months to find and land a job, and not just a remote job, a job period. That is the standard, right? It takes about 3 to 6 months to find and land a job. And so I think people get very fatigued. People get very frustrated throughout that process. And it's understandable, right? When you get ghosted by recruiters or you don't hear back or you get rejected, it can be very demoralizing, it can be very frustrating, and it can be very difficult not to take it personally, right? And so one of the biggest challenges making it through that and imploring patience through that process. And so what I tell people to do if that's the case is one, it is okay to take a break, right? It is absolutely okay to say, hey, I'm going to step back from my job search for just a little while for my own mental health, for my own sanity. I'm going to take a break. But it's very important that you put parameters on that break. I'm going to take a break for 2 weeks and then I'm going to come back to it. The second thing that I think it's important is to set accountability standards for yourself. I think a lot of folks anecdotally will say, I've been applying for a lot of jobs. And we have when I ask the question, how many of you apply for? It may be 3 in a week. That's actually not a lot, right? So set
Right.
yourself a quota and keep track of the jobs that you are applying for because it may feel like a lot, but if you actually looked at the numbers, it may not be a lot. All right. And if you are lazily hitting that easy apply button, which I think is great, the easy apply button makes it very, very easy to submit jobs. But if you really want to stand out against other people, you're going to have to go and look at the keywords, look at the job posting, and say, does my resume speak to this job? Right. And if it doesn't, then you need to update it. And I'm absolutely not saying make things up, but if they have things in their job posting that meet your skills, your background, don't leave that out. It's important that you tell them that, right? If they have the word, setting customer expectations, setting client expectations, for instance, multiple times, they said it 3 times, it's really important to them. Have you had to set client expectations in your role? Well, then say that. Please say that. And so taking that time and taking the level of care to adjust your resume for the job that you're applying for is so important. And this should not take days or hours. This should take maybe 5 minutes. So we're not talking about a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
And then making sure that you are being intentional about getting help where it's needed. So as I said before, like figuring out where the bottleneck is and working with some career experts to help you get past those.
So helpful. So helpful. I think we have time for one more question. So Bethany is saying, how can you negotiate your work arrangement if the job you apply to doesn't have a remote work option? Hmm.
I
That's a great.
actually, it's a great question. I actually helped 5 people, 5 of the 30 people that left with me for the year abroad. I helped 5 of them convince their employer to let them work remotely. And so I'm going to try to answer this very, very quickly. But if they don't have a remote work policy, then you can propose that you can work remotely. But there are some keys that you have to address in that proposal. One, it must be a proposal, right? So, and when you think about proposing something to someone, you've got to think about what's in it for them. The ask cannot be, I want to work remotely because I fill in the blank. I want to travel. I want to spend time with my family. The truth is, it's got to be, what is the benefit to them? And so sit down and think through, how does this benefit your employer? What do they get from allowing you to work remotely, right? The second thing that you want to do is anticipate their concerns. So if they are going to be concerned about security, if they're going to be concerned about accountability, if they're going to be concerned about your work schedule, anything, what are the things that they could be concerned about and address them? Make it difficult to say no because you've already addressed the rebuttals. The third thing I'd say is it's very important to be honest with yourself about your brand equity at the company. And what I mean by brand equity is you are a brand, whether you know it or not, whether you're trying to be it or not, you are a brand. And your brand is what people think of when they hear your name, right? If you are opinionated, that may be your brand. If you are an ideas person, that may be your brand. If you're a problem solver, if you're thorough, that may be your brand. And so the question is, how much can your brand get you when it comes to negotiating the things that you want? And that can be anything from wanting flexible work arrangements, wanting a raise, wanting a promotion, and things like that. And so if you're honest with yourself about the value of your brand at your place of employment or at your job or at your company, then that's something that can help you as well. Understand, is my brand equity high? Do they value me here? And how do you decide that? What have been your evaluation scores? Do they trust you? Do you typically have autonomy? Are you micromanaged? Are you brought on big projects, right? Do they trust you with large projects? Things like that. So be honest with yourself about those things. And if not, then it's time to start working on that, right? And then the last thing I'd say is it's important to have a champion. No matter what it is that you want from your employment, from your company, it is important to have a champion. And a champion is someone that's going to fight for you in rooms that you are not in. And I think that's true whether you want remote work or whether you want anything, right? Whether you want to be put on a great project, whether you want a raise, whether you want a promotion, you should have a champion. If you don't have a champion, I want you to start working on one by the end of the year. Like, let's work on getting a champion. And that's someone that, understands the organization, right? Has some influence in the organization, someone that can mentor you, and someone that can speak on your behalf in rooms that you're not in.
Such great advice. And thank you so much. I can't believe this is the end of our chat. It went so fast and you've dropped so many great gems. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for dropping all of that amazing knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. And thank you everyone for joining in and tuning into our chat. Next week on Get Hired Live, Neil Barnett, who is Microsoft's Director of Inclusive Hiring and Accessibility, will be joining us to talk about job search practices for neurodiverse adults, including people with autism. Again, that's Friday, October 28th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. My producer will be dropping a link in the comments for you to RSVP. And in the meantime, we always have great programming for you on the LinkedIn news page. And on Monday, my colleague Nina Melendez will be talking to John Zimmer, who is the co-founder and president of Lyft. They will be discussing how automation is transforming ride sharing. Again, that's Monday, October 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can RSVP to the show using the link in the comments. And thank you so much again, everyone, for joining. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.